It's not too bad. Actually, I mean,
you look well rested.
my daughter is she's only getting up twice now, so.
Oh, okay, see, I can tell something going on. Okay, good.
Mary, are we live?
We're live now.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. This is February 8th, 2022, meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. And we'll come to order. Still waiting on Sammy, but he'll roll in eventually, I hope. And we'll start with the roll call by the clerk.
Okay. Mayor Damon Siles.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Susan Romaine.
Present.
Councilmember Barbara Foushee.
Present.
Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell.
Present.
Councilmember Danny Now.
Present.
And Councilmember Sammy Slade.
Present.
All right, we got everybody here. Great. Mary, do we have Fred Joyner in the? We do. We do bring Fred over. We're going to start with our poetry reading. Welcome, Fred.
Good evening. Good evening. How y'all doing? Good to see you. I have a poem. I'm going to share a poem by a poet. I decided to come out of my comfort zone a little bit. I like poems that like really kind of speak truth to power all the time. But I picked a poem by another poet who also speaks truth to power, but it's a different kind of power, I think. And he's a beautiful poet. His brother named Ed Roberson, one of my favorite poets. And this poem is called the empty of the bottlenecks. And it's a cool poem because I think he's talking about, he's called an eco poet. He writes a lot about the environment and our place in it as organisms. And I thought I would read it. This is in celebration of Black History Month. Ed Roberson is African American poet. Check out his work. I think you'll all really enjoy it. Beautiful poet. The empty of bottlenecks. What happens is that which happens without what we know of it. Paris without Notre Dame happened 2 weeks ago. Persepolis was gone again 3 years ago. We have pictures again. We think this just may be the last. Venice without canals, only water. Only a Chicago-sized huddle of us left on the face of the earth. No New Delhi, no New York, Mexico City, Los Angeles ever again. All of that down to a Chicago-sized huddle of us left, scattered across the face of the earth. It has happened before. We can never be sure which time we'll be able to continue, only to no more than none. No size, no huddle to happen. That's Ed Roberson from this collection called Asked What Changed. It's a beautiful book. He's meditating on the environment. He's meditating on, just human beings' place in the world and kind of what happens if we don't figure out how to love each other and love the planet better. So, Ed Roberson, check him out.
Thank you, Fred. Great as usual.
Thank you.
All right. Before we move on, I wanted to just take 1 minute, if I may, to acknowledge the passing of a local friend to many of us. You may have seen the news last week of the death of Bill Fairbanks, who was one of the founders of Carrboro's, which is a place that I know and I'm sure all of you have forged a lot of great memories over the years. There was a nice quote in the statement that his family released, in which they said that Bill and Gail's his wife, when they founded Carrboro's 25 years ago, built a place where customers and employees are appreciated and celebrated. And he will be forever in this place with us. And I'll just say that Bill's face is one that actually was one of the first faces I became familiar with as a regular when I first came to Carrboro all those years ago. And it certainly has remained that kind of space for me and for all of us, I think. And so I just wanted to share condolences and well wishes with his family, Gail and Ray and the rest of the family. And of course, Ray continues to operate the business and is doing very well. And she's continued to be a great member of the Carrboro local business community. So just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that. Next, we will have announcements of upcoming meetings. Mary?
Okay. The next 3 meetings are all on tomorrow, Wednesday, February 9th. There's an Arts Committee meeting at 6 p.m. an Economic Sustainability Commission meeting at 6 p.m. and then a Stormwater Advisory Commission meeting also at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Then on Monday, February 14th at 7 p.m., there's a Recreation and Parks Commission meeting. And then next Tuesday, February 15th, is our next Town Council meeting at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Mary. I'll just add that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. is the monthly board meeting of the Durham Chapel Hill Carrboro Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I'm not sure if there are other meetings that we missed, council members.
Just a correction, the Stormwater Advisory Committee meets at 6:30.
Great, thank you, Sammy. Okay, next we'll move on to public comment. I have a couple of people signed up. And so, Mary, if we could bring over Shelley and Kevin, please. Welcome, Shelley. Hi, Kevin.
Good evening.
So as usual, we ask speakers, as you know, to keep their comments to about 3 minutes, no more than that. I'm not sure which one of you wants to go first, but please go for it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So this comment is in reference to the Merritt gravel pit and the Merritts. Just for transparency and some background for those who may be watching tonight or in a recorded video at a later date. In 2018, January, the town of Carrboro received a complaint about the Merritt gravel pit and Tony Merritt excavating and constructing a 50-foot by 300-foot long road in an ephemeral stream in the town of Carrboro's designated stream buffer. It wasn't until August of 2019 that the town of Carrboro actually issued a notice of violation, which was almost a year and a half later. This is after months of refusing to believe that the excavation was in the town of Carrboro jurisdiction. The town of Carrboro filed lawsuit against the Merritts for not repairing this area. In June of 2020, the Orange County Superior Court issued granted a temporary restraining order, and which granted the town's results, which is to provide them with a remediation plan within 30 days of the notice of violation and to commence work to repair the stream buffer and to remediate the ephemeral stream which was damaged. However, in March of 2021, just last year, the town of Carrboro attorney Nick Herman and the Merritt's attorney construed a settlement agreement which required no removal of this 50 by 300 foot road, which was built in a stream buffer and an ephemeral stream, which was designated by the town of Carrboro. And it also did require no remediation of the stream buffer. So neither of the things that were done or required by the town were completed. So the question is, why? Why did the town of Carrboro go through spending thousands of dollars, Damon, of taxpayer money to go through a lawsuit and a year and a half to go through this charade only to come up with a settlement which required no remediation of the stream buffer? It begs the question, why did all of you approve that? Why did you do that? I'm sure there are people watching today that are having to jump through a bunch of hoops of the land use ordinance and repair stream buffers or keep it within their confines of their applying of a CUP or an SUP. So the question is why? And that question remains. It still hasn't been answered. So we're going to keep continuing to be here until it gets answered. Thank you. I'm going to pass this over to Shelley. She has some comments as well.
Thank you, Kevin. Shelley, go ahead.
I have some concerns about, we did a public records request to get all of the records associated with the closed meeting during which the settlement agreement was agreed upon. And the open meeting law says that a public body may consider and give instructions to an attorney concerning the handling or settlement of a claim, judicial action, blah, 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 if the public body has approved or considered a settlement other than a malpractice settlement in a closed session. The terms of that session shall be reported to the public body and entered into its minutes as soon as possible. So we received the settlement agreement, and I assume that that's what you guys determined was informing us of your decision behind closed doors. However, it also says, the open meetings law also says, every public body shall keep full and accurate minutes of all official meetings, including any closed sessions held pursuant to GS 143-318-11. Such minutes may be in written form or, at the option of the public body, may be in the form of sound or video and sound recordings. Such accounts may be a written narrative or video or audio recording. So when I requested these minutes, I got a bare bones summary, which was already posted online in the agenda minutes. What I want to know is, where are the notes regarding a full and accurate account of what occurred during that meeting? This also says that a public body can consider and give instructions to an attorney concerning the handling of a settlement. But what it sounds like is that you all were given instructions from an attorney. Because if I were to believe that you individually gave instructions to Nick Herman to obliterate a stream buffer and not require someone to repair it, and to waste taxpayer money, thousands, it was thousands of dollars that you wasted fighting this in court, and then you threw it away. And what's really disgusting is that the one thing you did mention in your minutes was that one of you declined to accept this settlement, and every single other member of the town council said, no, we're sure we heard him say he agreed to it. And you forced him to agree to it, knowing that this person in particular would never have agreed to this malarkey.
Thank you, Shelley.
All done.
Thanks. Okay, Mr. Manager, Mr. Attorney, Madam Clerk, we had one question from Kevin regarding the rationale for the settlement agreement, and then a question from Shelley regarding clarity about how responsive we've been to the public records request about the meeting at which that agreement was agreed to. So when you all have an opportunity, would let Shelley and Kevin know what they're looking for. Any other comments from you, Mr. Manager?
No, Mayor, we'll look into these two items.
Thank you very much. Right. Next up on our agenda is the consent agenda. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. There's one item on the consent agenda. It's the approval of the December 14, 2021 meeting minutes with changes by Council Member Haven O'Donnell and Council Member Romaine.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? By Barbara.
Yep.
Is there a second? By Randy. For discussion, Randy?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that there seems to be two different names for the COVID fund, and in the minutes, it refers to the name that was last used, but the COVID-19 Emergency Loan Fund Review Committee from May 18th, 2020 has another name, and so did the one that was the follow-up. And I just think we need to, I think it needs to be consistent. So whatever we need to do to, to make that consistent, that would be great. Because I think it's to have two different names when it refers to the same body of folks who were reviewing it, I think is problematic. So that was one comment I wanted to make clear. And the second was that the committee made the recommendations to the town council that made the approval. And I think that was in my notes to everyone.
Right.
So with that,
on that second point, Randy, Mary, that was a correction that Randy offered about it's the council that approved the grants that on the basis of the recommendation from the committee. Has that change been made to the minutes?
I did. I made those changes. I don't know if you want to look at it again and make sure.
Did you also make the names of the committees consistent? Was that another comment Randy had?
Yes, but I'll send it out. I'll send it out right now so you can look at it and make sure it's like you want it. But I made, exactly the changes that that both of you submitted.
Okay. I see a hand by Barbara. Barbara?
Thank you, Mayor. So these were two different processes. One was a loan process, and then one was the business grant, which was not a loan. Or am I not understanding clearly what Councilmember Haven O'Donnell is asking or saying? Because it's two different processes. So
it was the same committee of people,
right,
that both handled both processes. So I think Randy is asking that we make sure that it's clear in the minutes that that's the same committee.
Oh, okay. So it's about the committee and not the process. Got it. Thank you.
So Mary, is that change clear enough for you that we just need to make sure that it's clear in the minutes that it's one committee? The loan/grant committee is one thing. And if that can just be used consistently throughout those minutes, that would be good.
And I'll double check and make sure I changed it in the spots that you guys said to change it. I just copied and pasted exactly what you said, but I'll go through and make sure it's not anywhere else in the minutes.
Right. So with that, we had a motion by Barbara, second by Randy to approve the minutes as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. We'll do a roll call vote. Barbara?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Danny?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
And Sammy?
Aye.
And me. Matter passes unanimously. All right. Mr. Manager, next item, please.
Okay, the first item of the other matters is a discussion and proposed adoption of a strategy to use town-owned land for affordable housing. The purpose of this item is for the town council to discuss and consider adopting a strategy to use town-owned land to create affordable housing. And we have with us tonight Anne Marie Bonneman, our Housing and Community Services Management Specialist, to do the presentation.
Great. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Anne-Marie Vanneman with the Housing and Community Services Department, and I'm before you tonight to present the draft strategy for the use of town-owned land to create affordable housing, and to hear your feedback and possibly the adoption of the strategy. So the town of Carrboro has a housing gap of 1,079 units. This was determined in our draft comprehensive plan. It's comprised of 314 ownership units, which is affecting households who earn $75,000 or less, as well as 765 rental units, which affects households who are earning $25,000 or less. So to address this gap and other affordable housing issues, the strategy of using town-owned land to create affordable housing has been frequently cited by the AHAC, and it's been presented to the council as recently as 2018. It's reflected in our adopted goals and strategies document, and as you can see here, it is also included in the draft comprehensive plan. Creating affordable housing on land that's not used for other public purposes offers us many benefits. It gives the town the ability to prioritize its goals like racial equity and climate action within the housing development process. It also helps us ensure that the end product is a community designed product. And finally, it helps us be proactive in creating affordable housing by using a request for proposal process. So housing staff researched many other municipalities across the region and as well as the nation, and several best practices kept popping up across all of the research, and they are inventory and assessment, community engagement, having a clearly defined process, and having an expedited development review process for affordable housing projects. We looked at cities like Seattle, areas like Northern Virginia and Montgomery County, Maryland, and many others. The inventory and assessment category also includes pre-development assessments, which I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, and I will go over each one of these best practices in the upcoming slides. So inventory and assessment. Many of the larger municipalities had quite large inventories of land that also fluctuates a great deal through acquisition and disposition. These municipalities tended to have regular reviews of their inventory. They would assess all incoming property for affordable housing first, or some would decide to allocate the proceeds of a possible sale of the land for allocated towards affordable housing. With Carrboro's list being much more modest and it doesn't fluctuate a great deal, these practices can still be useful for us to consider as we move forward. Over the next few slides, I'll talk about what the town has done in terms of land assessment. But rather than delving tonight into the potential of all of our properties, I'd like to focus on the 3 properties that have already been identified for affordable housing. and our experience in developing these 3 properties will help us inform this process as we go on. It's also important for us to keep in mind that the process that we're developing can also be used for town-owned land for other purposes, not just affordable housing. It can be applied to other land uses. So step 1, the strategy recommends inventory and assessment. Use the established inventory of real property. You begin there. Next, you analyze the properties for residential development. And the third step is to conduct the pre-assessment and preliminary design work and hiring a consultant to do that for you. The first 2 items, the town staff has already completed in 2015. And we are proposing to begin the third step of working with a consultant to work on the pre-development assessment and preliminary designs with the next parcel that we select for affordable housing. And we think that this final step here is very important based on our experience with the Hill Street project. We found in the early days of working in that project that had we done some pre-development on the site, we could have saved the nonprofit some time and some money in the process, and we could have discovered any hiccups in the beginning of the process rather than in the middle of it. An example of this is the concept drawings were complete, and then we discovered that there was an easement on the property, so some work had to be done on the concept plan and changing it. So it would be best to know what we're dealing with in terms of the potential of the property before we get too far into the process. So back in 2017, town staff looked at 47 properties, and they evaluated the properties on these criteria, and I'm going to read them because I haven't memorized them. If a property was within a conservation easement, it was excluded, or inside a long-term interest area, such as future utility development. If there was no water or sewer nearby, if it was within a 100-year floodplain, if it was within a dedicated right-of-way, if the parcel was already fully developed, or if it was inside the rural buffer zoning. So of these 47, they found 5 possibilities and selected three different parcels. And for those of you who are familiar with this, it's Hill Street, Press Street, and 2 parcels with Pathway Drive. The Hill Street property is already underway in the partnership with Pee Wee Homes that will eventually provide 3 small homes on that lot. The Crest Street property, its current zoning can have 6 units on it with a density bonus, another 9 units. Pathway Drive right now is currently zoned for 23 units. With the density bonus, it could provide up to 34. What we have done in our housing and community services budget is allocated $5,000 for this year to begin some preliminary assessment and design work for the next parcel that we'd like to develop for affordable housing. And we're going to work on an estimation of funds that we think we might need next year to continue the process. Based on our research, community engagement is incredibly important in this process. It's not only important in assessing the support for the project, but it also gives the community a chance to inform the design of the end product of the community that will be built. So as I said, community engagement helps inform the project design and builds trust in the project. It can help address any possible issues early in the process. And it helps identify what the community wants and needs in affordable housing. And it sets us up really well, I think, to utilize design-centered thinking in this process. And going back to the Hill Street project again, community involvement has really been the driving force in the development of that parcel from the very beginning. When the project idea was brought to the town by the Compass Group, the Jackson Center, the Northside Neighborhood Initiative, the neighbors, and Pee Wee Homes, and they are still moving the process along to date. Finally, by the town using its own land, we can really ensure that the outreach and the engagement for the community's design workshops adopts the protocols for the One Orange Racial Equity Plan. So a clearly designed process is the third best practice that we found. It's very important because it saves local governments money and time, as well as the developers. And it helps make sure that the end product meets the expectations of the town. Step 3, RFP and development review. We're suggesting to hire a consultant to develop the RFP and scoring rubric. We don't have to do this. We can do it in-house, but we wanted to include that in case there was a possibility of any staffing issues. And the RFP will be based on the preliminary assessments and designs and the goals. And we will also determine kind of the scoring rubric for each project. One other piece that's very important is to conduct proactive outreach with developers, to go beyond our current relationships with affordable housing developers, to reach out to others, to bring in as many innovative ideas as we possibly can. So conducting that work before we release the RFP is really beneficial. Step 4, by far the most popular best practice, is an expedited review process. Having one, also, as we've said before, saves time and money both for the developer, but it also, by the town conducting the pre-development assessments and preliminary designs, it creates kind of a step into project. The parameters of the project are already there, so the developer can just step in and build out from there. Another important aspect of the expedited review is having housing staff act as a go-between between the planning department and the developer. This can help with communication issues, help maintain the project's momentum, and troubleshoot new potential issues. And this is an estimate of a timeline of developing an affordable housing parcel. I'll just go through it quickly if you're having trouble seeing it. We've completed the first step. The properties are identified and supported by the council. That was completed in 2018. Community visioning, we think this might take about 2 months, and it's in line with a comprehensive plan adoption. RFP consultant for pre-development and MOU, 3 months. Concept plan design, 2 months. Community engagement after that for another 2 months. Concept plan, revisions, selection, and approval. Zoning changes if needed. RFP for developer selection, approval, execute MOU, draft site plan. And the streamlined development review process, 4 months, with the timeline ending with the beginning of construction. Overall, this is estimated to take about 23 months, but lessons learned with experience, we can adjust the timeline as our experience is showing that if we need to lengthen it, or there are ways that we can actually shorten it. And if this process is adopted, we can begin working on the next parcel this spring. And one other thing to note is what's not included in this timeline is that any funding requirements or any other needs like that are not included, and that could potentially add to the timeline. So thank you. I'd like to just ask you for your feedback, see if you have any questions. And there is a resolution before you, should you decide you want to approve the process.
Great. Thanks very much, Anne Marie. Appreciate the clear presentation. And I know you all have been working hard on this and, of course, consulting with our advisory board members. I want to make sure before we go to council member questions, I'm not sure if we don't have anyone signed up from the public to speak on this topic, but I want to make sure that there isn't somebody out there who needs to raise their hand and let me know that they are here for this topic. So I'll just take 5 seconds, use that raise hand button. All right. Okay, council members, your turn to use the raise hand button. Sammy, and then we'll go to Randy after that.
Thanks, Damon. Thanks, Anna Marie, for your presentation and all the work you've put into this. We've advanced a lot. It's really exciting to see this moving forward. You know, for the Crest Street property, back when we started with the Affordable Housing Task Force, we'd reached out to the property owner on Crest Street that is making that and at that time he was not interested, but I think he didn't shoot it down completely. So I'd very much recommend staff to contact that property owner. And at the time it was, I believe, Matt Hett, to see, you know, to what degree he'd be interested in selling his property to the town so that we could develop more affordable housing there. Just wouldn't hurt to check in, and it's really hard given the shape that it has to maximize affordable housing there. The other thing I was going to say was when we do the request, the second request for proposals, that after we get you know, feedback from community members as to what to include in the design, let's already be thinking about including maximizing energy efficiency and solarizing, especially given the grant that the county has and the opportunity. So we pursue those two, and that whoever is doing that, responding to the request for proposals, could include, you know, what will be the rent and or mortgage, you know, for high efficiency and solar, you know, so we can compare the benefit of both. Because you know, I presume there will be support from the county to solarize affordable housing, and definitely support for energy efficiency, and both of those would translate into affordable housing in terms of cheaper rent or mortgage. Thanks.
Thanks, Sammy. Randy, you're next, and then we'll go to Susan.
Yeah, I'm tracking with you, Sammy. I was going to ask that as we move into this realm of talking about town-owned property and affordable housing, that we look at having Laura take our community climate action plan and create a punch list, a green neighborhood punch list that could be part of the construction development and the overall concept planning for whatever is going into each of these two other spaces, rather than working reactively, proactively looking at what are the things that we're looking for in a green neighborhood, since we're essentially creating enclaves. So that would be my first recommendation, that we create a green neighborhood punch list to inform our process. Second, I had a question for Anne Marie that wasn't clear in the materials sent to us regarding Pathway, because Pathway Drive, I know it said it's 6.5 acres. Can you tell me, Anne Marie, how much of that is on the north side that has that very tricky topography?
Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen again. And I think I have a slide with the parcels up there that might answer your question.
Yeah, what I'm trying to figure out is what is the practicality on that side. The south side, I know is a really solid, good space, but I'd rather be realistic looking at that northern section that I know right now is like a ravine.
Yeah, I've got the sheet up here, but I think since neither Rebecca or I were here when this was done, that if Trish is in the audience, if she wouldn't mind coming over to answer that question for you.
And if you could go, if you could go to the next slide, it has a better image. Whoops.
I think I did a truncated version of that. I just had the considerations.
Okay, sorry.
I'm trying to pull Trish over. Here we go.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Hi, Trish.
Hi there.
Did you hear the question that Randy had about the pathway location?
She asked about the acreage, I think, on I do not have the breakdown of the acreage for the two sides of the property.
Yeah.
There is sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say it's more than the acreage on the north side. It's the topography and trying to figure out what is really viable. I'd rather have, realistic numbers.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, the numbers are based on the density of the zoning that's there now.
Yeah.
And a site plan, a variety of housing types are permissible. So a single building is permissible with multiple units in it, or townhouses, or something, a condominium style, or a variety of housing types are available to be considered. I think without going more deeply into someone really doing testing, a variety of site planning options, we can't speak a whole lot about
right
where a road might cross to connect from. You can see the configuration of the lot on the north side has. It's not one contiguous polygon. So.
Well, yeah, but I think that it's almost like a ravine back there. So that's why I'm asking, because I'm imagining, just like Spring Valley, homes need to, or however it's organized, would have to take in the slope and elevation relationship. Okay, that's all I was trying to get.
Yeah. I think it may be that the most suitable locations are closer to Pathway Drive.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. I look forward to seeing what you're going to find out. Thanks.
Thanks, Randy. Thank you for joining us. Susan, you're next, and then we'll go to Barbara.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Anne Marie, for your presentation this evening. And it was just, it was really just great to hear this just really thoughtful strategy to put in place to help us build affordable housing on town-owned land. So I have 3 takeaways. The first takeaway was we have, sounds like 47 parcels in Carrboro, and only 5 parcels, I think, on 3 different sites are well suited for affordable housing. So it was, and you went through all of the reasons that some of these parcels have been excluded, but it leaves us with not very many options left for using this town-owned land for affordable housing. So it does it does point out, Rob LaBelle's email yesterday on encouraging council to start looking at rezoning to create more opportunities for us to build multifamily housing and to build triplexes and fourplexes and to build, workforce housing and townhomes and missing middle housing. So that's one takeaway is I think this could be a really great opportunity for us to start looking at that. And that's certainly also included in the draft comprehensive plan. My second takeaway was because this land would potentially be donated, this seems like a really, really rare opportunity at the Crest and Hill Street and Pathway Drive projects to make the numbers work for building housing for community members that are living at 30% AMI or below. It's as you know better than anybody, I mean, it's just really hard to make those numbers work at 30% AMI. So with this, the fact that there's so little land left and we have this rare opportunity to do this, I hope that we will really prioritize that when we move forward with these projects. These are, of course, the most housing cost burden community members. Many have been historically excluded from the private market, and many are going to be community members of color. So let's build them a home here in Carrboro. And then the third point, Anne Marie, was if I understood you correctly, you were saying that some of the lessons that we learn using the town-owned land to build affordable housing, we could apply those to other uses. And I wanted to suggest that we actually even look beyond that we look for some of the lessons that we learned through this strategy and apply them to other kinds of residential development and other kinds of commercial development. So during your presentation, I mean, so many things stood out to me in this process. The community engagement piece and the real, the very clearly defined process to go through, the whole pre-development assessment that sounds like was really effective. Could have saved some money at the Hill Street project. This idea of the proactive outreach that would bring in really innovative ideas. I love the idea of the expedited process where the developer could sort of step into the project. So I mention all this because I shared with everybody some language earlier today in an email for a motion that I was hoping to offer tonight that would use some of the lessons that you all learn by hopefully the strategy that we approve later this evening, but taking some of these lessons and applying it to some of our other residential development and commercial development, and not only maybe make the process, expedite the process, but also enrich the process with more community development and proactive outreach to try and bring in different types of developers and what have you. So I'm not sure, Mayor, if I need to read the language in my motion again, or since I've already shared that language, if that is sufficient.
So I think, Susan, what I would suggest is that we kind of get through the discussion and move toward how we're going to handle the resolution that's before us. And perhaps your language could be considered as part of that resolution when we get there.
Sure. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Anne Marie. I really appreciate your presentation.
Okay, Barbara, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. And messaging is important, especially when we're talking about members of our community who are low wealth or unable to obtain the type of housing that maybe some of us live in. And so, we have to be careful, when we're talking about that, because it may sound one way to you, but to somebody else, it may be landing incorrectly. So I wanted to put that out there. So Anne Marie, thank you so much. You did an amazing job with the presentation. What are you after Rebecca's job? I see you, Diana. You after Rebecca, she's shaking her head, y'all, but she's smiling. She might be after Rebecca's job. But you did a great job. Some things that I wanted to pull out that I really liked. The community engagement, where you said you were going to use the design-centered approach and the One Orange racial equity plan outreach strategy. I thought that was really great. And it's centering the work that's currently going on here in the town of Carrboro, which is fantastic. And I think all of our community outreach should just be centered in that way. And secondly, prioritizing innovation and women-owned and minority-owned businesses under the outreach to developers. And so putting that, at the top of the list, I really love that. And I just think that this strategy is well thought out. I appreciate the work that you, Rebecca, and there's probably one other staff member, isn't there? Am I right? You, Rebecca? Yes. All the work that you guys have put into it as staff, as well as the AHAC. The AHAC is led by, I think, still Quentin Harper. They gnashed over this and talked about it, and all that. And, I think this really, really looks good. And I'm just really proud of what we're looking at tonight. And so when you talk about housing staff as an intermediary, housing staff can facilitate a project's progression by assisting in internal communication, project management, troubleshooting potential issues, moving the project along. And when I looked at that, I was like, are we going to have to expand our housing staff, right? And then I read a little farther, and it talked about the examination of national strategies that can provide an indication of the human and funding resources a local government will require, depending on the role or level of involvement the local government plays in the development process. And I would figure that we would take the lead here. And when I think about that, the last sentence where I'm reading it says, requires upfront funding and sufficient staff capacity and expertise. So when I think about that, it seems like, it's more work, than normal. And so, I just was thinking about, maybe what you thought, Anne Marie, as to whether you would need maybe a staff expansion, or do you feel like, because you guys already carry a pretty heavy load, already. So, yeah. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think the development of the next two parcels will give us those answers. The national strategy does kind of indicate it's covering counties who have housing authorities as well. There are some developments on town-owned land that are built with a private developer and the housing authority, and that's also what I was talking about. How big the project is going to be is kind of going to, and the level of expertise it might take from the staff would give you a better idea of those costs and staffing increases.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Anne Marie.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Sammy.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Barbara's comment on staffing. One opportunity might be to be thinking of the county and supporting and providing staffing for these kinds of efforts. Considering that, urban areas are the towns, then the county, gets a lot of taxes that may be leverageable towards facilitating these kinds of things. We could be thinking of them staffing up to augment, both Carrboro and Hillsborough is also a small town. Oftentimes it's really hard to staff up for small towns. But if we could share a staff person and the county be the place who's paying for that would be really good. So this is kind of thinking that we're also playing with in terms of climate action. I just also wanted to go behind Susan's point of lessons learned here, and the other opportunity is in terms of actual property acquisition. Let's be thinking about having the land with which to do things with, and putting that money up. So, and especially in light of the current conversation in terms of bumping up another half cent for our affordable housing, be thinking about how we could make that half cent go far. So I just wanted to share some of those thoughts.
Thanks, Amy. Anne Marie, I just had a couple of thoughts. Thanks again for the presentation. One is, in looking, you laid out at the end of your presentation, laid out kind of a timeline of how this process would proceed, for example, with the next project or the next parcel. And if I recall correctly, it shows about a 2-year timeline. I think you said 23 months, something like that. That includes all of the sort of preliminary work, the hiring of RFP and so on for selecting a consultant, community engagement, all of those pieces. And it ends up coming to 2 years, which feels not expedited. Although I know that you're talking, when you talk about the expedited development review, you're really referring to the sort of more formal development review that we're more familiar with. I'm wondering if some of those components of the process you laid out are things that could be done simultaneously for more than one parcel. So, for example, you're thinking about, I guess, going to the Crest Street parcel next, if I'm understanding you correctly. At the same time that you're doing some of that preliminary work, is it possible, I wonder, to be doing some of the same work for the pathway site, for example? In other words, have some of those things going on at the same time. I know that each one of those presents a lot of different challenges and so on, but it feels like if we're engaging in, I don't know, it seems like there's some opportunity there to just do like things at the same time to save time down the road. Even if, for example, the pathway site doesn't become a development opportunity as quickly, you will have still completed some of that earlier work around understanding, for example, the site, some of the questions that Randy was asking, for example, about hiring a consultant or whoever to do site assessment and so on. So that was one thought that came to mind. I really disagree with all the comments you've gotten from other council members about all the work that's gone into this. I appreciate that you're tying this directly to our existing plans and policies. We have been talking about doing this approach for a while, and sort of building up to gain the knowledge base that you presented us with here has been really valuable. And it helps us hopefully get closer to checking off that box in our goals and strategies document. So thank you for being the force behind doing that. We have, I see a hand. Randy.
Yeah, I want to understand. I want to understand we have a 1.5 cent tax that generates what approximately how much right now? That
about,
1.5.
About $300,000 or so a year. Yeah.
Right. So, okay. I thought, yeah. All right. So maybe closer to 350. So the half cent would generate approximately how much?
I think it would get us up to near $500,000 total.
Okay. Combined. Right. So combined. So, one of the things I want us to be thinking carefully about, if we have $500,000, right? And we have a project that between these two projects may take the next 2 years. How does having that kind of funding going into two very specific projects, how does that look? And what could that possibly translate as? So I think on some level we need to have that conversation because, folks are talking about, well, add on the other half cent. I want to know, what does that look like in terms of what does it translate to? Or how can we use, those funds for these two projects? That's number one. The second question I had is really for us, which is this: we keep circulating around this question of what is affordable, and to whom is it affordable? I was in the joint review a couple weeks ago when, a developer with a concept for Hogan's Ridge was talking over $4,500, $450,000 was affordable range. That's preposterous. So when are we going to identify very specifically, and Susan is referring to it in terms of, less than 30% AMI, that low income or housing insecure folks are taken care of. I think we all were very much engaged with House Us Now. I want to know how those needs are going to be met, and whether or not we start to really talk about, who we want to ensure the housing for, because this question of affordability is getting stretched in all directions at this point. And that's something for us, I think, to define.
That definitely will be a topic for multiple future conversations, including the budget conversation. Barbara.
Thank you, Mayor. And so I was just going to move attachment A, but unless there are further comments from council members, but also to follow up on what Councilmember Haven O'Donnell just said. So it would bring us up to around $500,000, but then think about, that $500,000 is not just going to be designated for those projects on town-owned land. You still have critical home repairs, weatherization, and some of the other projects, that come through the AHAC currently. And so, it's money, money, money. I mean, whether we want, this is where we are. And in order to run with the big dogs, we're going to have money. And so, as the mayor said, that's another conversation. Also, like that Councilmember Haven O'Donnell mentioned something. I think maybe we started talking about it maybe in a last meeting about what is affordability, here in Carrboro. I mean, we talk about the AMI, all right, but I mean, what is affordability here in Carrboro, and to whom, because some people say $350,000 is affordable, and others say, that's unobtainable. So I think those are two very important questions. But really, I was going to just move attachment A, Mayor. Thanks, and thank you, Randy, for that.
Thanks, Barbara. And in your motion, are you including the addition of the now therefore clause that Susan offered by email?
Oh, can we see? Can we see that? Where is that going?
I can read it for you if you like, unless Susan wants to read it herself. But
it can't be shared. Can it be shared on the screen?
Sure, can try that.
Are we going to put it at the end, or where are we placing that? At the end?
I think that's where it would make sense. But let me see if I can share my screen. And Randy, do you have something to add here, or are you seconding the motion?
Well, I'll second it, but actually I want to make a friendly amendment, because I think the term lessons learned are really, I mean, since Hill Street is in process and the other two are not, it's not so much lessons learned, but maybe getting to what Anne Marie was describing in terms of assessments and
well, I think
evaluation.
There will be lessons learned. I think there's no doubt about that. So I think that Susan, I suspect, is getting at what are those lessons going to be from the process of dealing with these two parcels. And I'm not trying to speak for Susan here. Susan, if you want to chime in, but we are hopefully going to learn lessons from those two experiences that we can then perhaps parlay into something greater. Share this. This is the email that Susan sent.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
So the inserted language would be at the end of the resolution under this comment, for the comments section. Now, therefore, be it resolved, staff will document lessons learned from Town of Carrboro's Crest and Hill Streets and Pathway Drive affordable housing projects, Town of Chapel Hill's pilot expedited review process, and best practices as determined by a review of national and regional strategies for using public land to create affordable housing, and apply some of those lessons to other residential and commercial development projects, especially as they relate to an expedited review process, as a way of growing and diversifying the town's housing stock and its property tax base, and therefore providing relief to community members who are housing cost burdened.
Yeah, so I think the only thing that I thought made it more clear was to say staff will document, maybe you can say what is learned from assessment and evaluation from the town's blah, blah, blah. I would just.
You want to add the words assessment and evaluation?
Yeah, I take out lessons and I just say what is learned from assessment and evaluation of. I think it's stronger.
Okay. I don't have strong feelings about that if Barbara's the one making the motion. So, Barbara, you ready to?
Oh, it doesn't matter to me. I just needed to read it again because I just kind of flipped through it earlier. I mean, I get what what she's trying to say. So it's fine.
Susan, I think that maintains what you were trying to get at with your language. Do you agree, Susan?
Yes, I'm fine. As is, I'm fine with Randy's changes.
Okay, so there's a motion by Barbara before us. Is there a second?
I second.
A second by Randy. And I'll do a roll call vote. Barbara.
Aye.
Randy.
Aye.
Danny.
Aye.
Susan.
Aye.
Sammy.
Aye.
And Damon. Aye. Matter passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Anne Marie, for all your work. And Trish, thanks for being here as well. Good to see you.
Whoop whoop, Anne Marie. I see you, Anne.
Great job. Go team, go.
All right. We're going to move on now to our next agenda item. Mr. Manager.
Okay, the next item is the Energy and Climate Protection Plan and Community Climate Action Plan Implementation Update. The purpose of this item is to update the Council on Energy and Climate Protection Plan and Community Climate Action Plan implementation efforts. And we have Laura Janway, our environmental planner, with us tonight to make the presentation.
Welcome, Laura.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. Great to be here with you tonight. Hello. And
the screen is yours whenever you're ready.
Thank you. All right, so tonight I'm going to be updating you on implementation of the town's climate action plans. I've also provided a draft fleet study scope for comments, and I will also be presenting the draft dietary greenhouse gas emissions inventory. The presentation will be broken up into two parts. Part one will include the implementation update and a draft fleet study scope, and part two will be the draft dietary greenhouse gas emissions inventory. To start, I'd like to talk a little bit about initiatives under the Energy and Climate Protection Plan. We submitted two proposals to the Orange County Climate Action Grant funding, and both of those projects received funding. They include a green roof and solar array on the west roof of the 203 project, and a staff member to help monitor the organics collection at the farmers market. And the farmers market staff member was fully funded, and the 203 project proposal was partially funded, and the grant administrators have encouraged the town to apply for the next round of funding this spring. In addition, we've been looking at making our town events more sustainable, thanks to Catherine Lazorko, the town's communications manager. For our Libba Cotton Day celebration, we had reusable decorations, and that's something that I think is important to note, that we're trying to look at all town operations and make everything as sustainable as we can. In addition, we have a renewable energy installation RFP that is currently open for bids. Thank you to our public works staff for all their work on this. The goals of this RFP are for the town to receive design and installation options for solar energy at 5 different locations on town property. We'd like to hopefully get lots of information about what this might cost and what our return on investment might be, and how we could look at economies of scale and how that might affect the pricing as well. We'd also like to look at multiple financing alternatives in addition to direct ownership, which also might include solar leasing, or other things such as debt financing. And so we're really looking forward to seeing the bids that come into this project. In addition, as attachment C, you have a draft scope for an alternative fuel analysis for the town fleet. And in this analysis, we wanted to look at all the different types of ways that we could convert our fleet and reduce emissions to meet our greenhouse gas emissions goals. And this goal is in the Energy and Climate Protection Plan and involves an 80% reduction in town operations emissions by 2030. So in this analysis, we wanted to consider a review of all of the available vehicles and equipment that might help us reach our goal. We anticipate that we'll be looking at electric vehicles to help us meet our goals. However, we wanted to make sure that we included other fuels as well, including potentially working with WASA on a partnership to use renewable biogas, or also looking at hybrid vehicles or potentially biofuels if these are options that could help us meet our goals. And it's also important to note that there may not be an electric option for several of the town vehicles that we might be looking at. So we wanted to make sure we were considering everything that we could find. The review will also look at town equipment. So we wanted to make sure it includes everything that uses fuel. That will include mowers, leaf blowers, and even chainsaws. And so we'd also like to make sure the analysis looks at all the infrastructure we might need to fuel or charge these vehicles, and how this might affect our town facilities. Do we have the capacity to do this on our town facilities right now, or what we might need in order to make this happen? Also, how will this change in fleet change our current maintenance protocols? And we definitely want to make sure that all the vehicles are considered in terms of their potential reduction to the greenhouse gas emissions. We also really need to look at projected costs and return on investment for this. And similar to the solar RFP, we want to look at any sort of financing strategy that might help us make this conversion by 2030. And we also really want to have a phased plan that will really make sure that we're on track in the next 8 years to meet our goal. And so as attachment A, you have a resolution that will allow you to provide comments on this draft scope. In addition, we've been doing some work on Community Climate Action Plan implementation. The Climate Action Team had their first meeting in November. We've had monthly meetings since then, and hope to meet later this month and early this year to talk about the next year's draft environmental sustainability work plan, which will be used to inform the climate action budget for next fiscal year. We've also been doing some number calculation for the implementation section of the comprehensive plan, really looking at the greenhouse gas emissions that might be attributed to these different items in the plan, and making sure that the implementation helps us make sure that we're on track to meet our goals. In addition, we're finalizing the installation of our 2 new electric vehicle charging stations. One is in the Rosemary lot downtown, and the other is at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park. And those stations will be in operation by March, and we're really excited about that. On the right in this slide, you can see a picture from the ribbon cutting at Carrboro Plaza for the new DC fast charging station. And this was installed by Piedmont Electric Membership Cooperative. And as part of their grant match, the town supplied some funding to help make this a reality. So it's great that we have a DC fast charger in Carrboro now as well. In addition, I'm working with staff in Chapel Hill, Hillsborough, and Orange County to do GIS analysis to look at where the best places might be to put new electric vehicle charging stations, because we really want to make sure that we have a good idea of where to put them when funding becomes available, because sometimes that can happen very quickly. We want to make sure that we're ready when it's available. We're working on a transportation demand management project called the Fresh Starts Project. This is in conjunction with the Center for Advanced Hindsight, And the center has submitted this project for review to their board at Duke, and will hopefully be sending out the welcome boxes to Carrboro residents later this month. In addition, we're working on finalizing everything for the Green Neighborhoods Grant Program. Getting very excited about this. Hope to have applications open very soon and really start targeted outreach for this program. We've also been reviewing applicants for the environmental planner position and hope to move forward soon on the hiring process for that position. We also have several projects related to ecosystem protection and enhancement, several related to invasive species removal, working on planning some great outreach events for Creek Week in early March, and working to finalize some documents and requirements for an independent removal program, and looking at how that would fit in with our larger scope of volunteer programs in the town. We also have a Boy Scout who's interested in helping plant some trees in Anderson Park, in the same area where we had the Urban Forest Council grant, which is the picture on the left. We're looking to finalize our reporting for Beast USA for 2021 and renew our participation in that initiative, and also renew our participation in the Mayor's Monarch Pledge this year as well. And I will stop there at the end of part one to see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Laura. Any questions for Laura about part one? Not sure what part 2 and 3 and so on are. Sammy.
Laura, can you just quickly say what part 2 is in case I have questions related to that?
Sure, yes. Part 2 will be the dietary greenhouse gas emissions.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you for all your work, as always. Very impressive and so comprehensive. And clearly, you will benefit from having further staff support. In our previous item, we commented on how the 3-staffed entity, affordable housing, could use more staffing. Well, you definitely need more staffing. There's a lot to do, and we're in a climate emergency. So thanks for all of this. I just had a few questions. One, under the renewable energy procurement, I was curious please remind me why the town hall isn't included in that. And 2, when we talk about 203, is the parking deck going to be included in that portion?
Yes, I think I think that the hope, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to talk to Ben Schmedeke to answer your questions, but I can definitely ask him and get back to you by email.
Yeah, sure. That's not a problem. And then the other question I had was wanting to make sure that the RFP for the alternative fuels is informed by the solar RFP. In other words, specifically under when you're listing the RFP, kind of the things that we're looking for there, under facility capacity analysis, we include what the potential for solar is at the facility for generating the necessary electricity to power the vehicles. So when the time comes, I'll want to make the motion for that resolution and include that. And also include under projected greenhouse gas scenarios, include scenario where all vehicles are powered by town generated solar electricity, so that the consultant can provide those 2 points of information as they do their analysis. Along with that previous question about the 203, I'm glad that the RFP is being put out so that it's synced up with where the 203 is in its process. But I was wondering what we're aiming for in the 203's timeline, because I understand that April 2nd is the LGC submission, but previous to that is the guaranteed maximum price. Maybe that's more a question for our manager.
So yes, we've aligned this so that it works with the time frame for the approval to LGC. So the solar RFP, we should get those bids back in the next couple of weeks. So it will align with the project. And to answer your earlier question, yes, we're looking at solar on both sides on the actual 203 building and the parking deck. That's a part of the RFP process as well.
Okay, great. And Mr. Manager, do you know if or why the town hall isn't included in the RFP for solarizing? Is that part of the retrofitting project? Maybe that's why.
We looked at the fire station as opposed to the town hall, but I don't remember exactly why it might be the roofing might not be appropriate at the town hall, but we did look at the fire station that would help power those buildings.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. The only thing there is as we're doing planning for retrofitting the town hall, likely we will be reinforcing that roof. So it would probably benefit us to know what the potential is for solar, assuming that kind of work will happen. And I know it sounded like the RFP's already gone out, but if it is possible, please do include the town hall as an option there. The other thing was, I just wanted to remind, I asked in a previous meeting or perhaps over email this question about what the per capita grant amounts are from Triangle J Council for the TDM strategies. I just want to remind whoever it is in staff that that's a pending question. I look forward to hearing the answer to. And then, Laura, you mentioned the GIS effort with our neighboring jurisdictions to identify potential electrification sites. Maybe it would be a good thing to include, as you all are doing that assessment, potential for solar panels for the various sites too. And then I just want to remind us, as per the climate budget resolution, Mr. Manager, and I know you're working on that, just to make sure we're aligning it with a budget process, and that we be including the thinking of how we're going to achieve our goal within that 10-year framing, and that we as a council get an opportunity to review that so it's meaningful. In other words, not at the very end when we're approving all the budget, but hopefully a little earlier, so we'll have meaningful input for you on that process. And one more thing, in the comprehensive plan, Laura, you mentioned that you're looking to assure that the implementation section, like what the actual quantities are for achieving our goals. And I just want to encourage you to make sure that if we're not achieving our goals, because that implementation section is kind of small, what's allowed to be included for all the sectors of how comprehensive this plan is, that we specify that this isn't comprehensive, that we have this broader goal, and this is only going to achieve X amount of that goal. Because I think as we've talked, the comprehensive plan is supposed to include the climate action plan, but we've also mentioned that the climate action plan is a living document, and simultaneously we have this goal. So we don't want that to be included in the implementation. We lose sight of the fact that that's just a portion of what we're really trying to achieve in terms of implementation. I think those are all the things I have for now. When the time comes, I'd like to move that resolution with those two requests for the RFP. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. We have Randy next, and then Susan.
Okay, I'm still digesting all of Sammy's list. Thank you, Sammy. All right, Laura, thank you. I really appreciate the slides. They bring all of the work together in a really cohesive manner and convey it very well. I really appreciate all the work on EV stations and getting them up and running, and the work to get the Carrboro Plaza EV station to happen. Regarding the green neighborhoods, one thing I don't want us to lose sight of is that sometimes we have individuals, not neighborhoods, that want to be active. So what I'd like to say, in absence of a title really for individuals who want to take on work in the community. I'd like to ask that one of the strands of the Community Climate Action Plan underscore community actioneers or the volunteers who are doing work that they may be doing the work individually and not necessarily tied to a green neighborhood, but they're doing green community work. And I just want to tease that out because each one of us on council knows people who are doing this kind of work, and yet it's kind of lost in the Community Climate Action Plan. So I'm making a pitch for a component of green neighborhoods to be climate community actioneers who are individuals who are doing the work. That's number one. Number two, going back to something I said on the town-owned property and affordable housing, and I was directing it to you, Laura, was to consider creating a punch list from our Community Climate Action Plan that can ride with the housing proposals on town-owned land. So, for example, you know, a neighborhood or community composting, or bi-weekly solid waste pickup. You get the drift? Laura, you with me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's the second suggestion. And I think I had one more. Oh, and that is to add to the work that's being done with the what's on the calendar for Bee City and the Monarch Butterfly Day and Creek Week and the Eagle Scout Project is to try and let's get that all wrapped in to our Carrboro Earth Day event on the 22nd of April.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, thank you, hon. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy. Next is Susan and then Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, so much for your presentation this evening. And I have just one comment and one question. First, following up with what Randy mentioned about trying to use the Green Neighborhood Grant Program to recognize individuals. It made me think, you know, I was so excited about this bike share program that will be coming to northern neighborhoods, southern neighborhoods, and encouraging people to bicycle, to e-bike, but also providing really important connections to transit. And so it did make me wonder about using possibly some of this grant money through the Green Neighborhood Program to reimburse people for whatever fees may be involved with using bike share. And so I wanted to just sort of raise that possibility if that would end up being a way to bring some of these individuals in for making these good decisions. And then I have a question on the fleet study, Laura. I didn't know if this was the time to ask that or.
Yeah.
So I know that I think I read that there were 105 vehicles right now that are part of our fleet. And my question is, as we transition over to these alternative fuel vehicles, I wasn't sure how this would work with maintenance. I assume that the maintenance for our vehicles right now is mostly done in-house. And as we transition, will those same folks doing the maintenance have the skills and the training they need to continue to be able to do it in-house? Or will they need additional training? Will the maintenance need to be contracted out? And if it's the latter case, I was wondering if that would be built into the cost of doing the conversion of our fleet.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we do perform a lot of our maintenance in-house. And I'll definitely make sure that it's written in there that that we're, as part of the cost, we want to look into what would it cost to train our employees for upgrade our facilities, get new certifications, or like you mentioned, contract with others to get this maintenance done, either local places or, we've learned some lessons about this with our other vehicles, like our hybrid waste truck, looking at, there were, I think, very few maintenance people qualified to perform maintenance on that vehicle available, when we needed the maintenance done. And so that's something that we definitely want to take that into account for sure in this study, and especially the cost that it might incur the town.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next is Barbara.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Laura. It's good to see you, and thank you for your report. I have two comments. I read recently, and I don't know if you guys heard about those 500 to 600 dead chickens that were dumped in a remote area in Sampson County. Not sure where they came from. The impact to the air quality there. I think the chickens, I'm not sure how long they have been out there. And then I want to bring us to the fertilizer plant fire in Winston-Salem recently. We know about the landfill at Rogers Road. We know the issues that happened with that, how long the landfill was open and what it took to close it down. And no coal UNC, right here at our back door. And the reason why I'm raising all of these situations are adjoining historically African-American neighborhoods. And so when I look at our CCAP, I'm thinking about environmental injustice and environmental justice, which includes the proliferation of climate change, how it impacts communities of color, low-income communities, civil rights issues, right? When we talk about environment and climate justice, because all of us depend on the environment. It's not just a few of us; it's all of us. And so, solving the climate crisis is about much more than just reducing pollution. It's about boosting resiliency in vulnerable communities, because Black and Brown communities will bear the brunt of this as we do with most things. And so it's also about repairing that legacy of environmental racism. And so I bring all this up to look at our current CCAP and say, where is environmental justice in this whole, where is it? And that is my first comment. Now, we talk about the impact to the Black and Brown communities. We bring that up on a regular. It's coming out of everybody's mouth. But then where is the environmental justice piece that ties and parallels so closely with climate change? And to me, they're not separate. I'm going to ask staff, not Councilmember Slate. And so I'm asking where this is, because as I started to think about these different instances, I'm like, okay, we got a community climate action plan that I feel is not addressing it in the appropriate way. And so that was one of my comments. The second one is the Green Neighborhoods Grant Program. And so I see where it says staff also plan to deliver targeted engagement to several Carrboro neighborhoods utilizing approaches centered on equity employed by the town during comprehensive plan development. And Mr. White, I want you to listen. This predates you. I know I have asked this question. This has got to be at least the third time I've asked this question. My question is how? What neighborhoods are you talking about? And how do you plan to reach? I'm assuming these are the hard to reach neighborhoods. And I'm looking at Mr. White now, because since I can't get the answer to the question, maybe Mr. White can work with Trish and Laura to get me the answer. because I've been asking it for every time I see this report, I ask it. And this last sentence here, you're moving words around and it's a different iteration. It's uncomfortable to me because it's like, why can't I get that question answered about how all of this is going to go forth? So Mr. White, if you could get that answer, I would appreciate it. And so the environmental justice piece is for whoever. I guess it would be for Laura to answer, but I see it as being a part of our larger climate change mitigation efforts. I mean, they run just so closely together that I just don't see where it's addressed in the appropriate fashion. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Barbara.
Get answers to your question.
Laura, did you want to respond or take an opportunity to respond later?
Yeah, I think, definitely be meeting with Manager White and Trish and get you the answers to your questions.
Thank you. I have just one comment, Laura, and that is about the fleet. Electrification of the fleet, I think raises a question about offering electrification options for staff who perhaps want to or are able to use a bicycle when moving about the community. And I know that we've provided bicycles in the past for town staff who are able to get around in that way. Seems like an opportunity, since we're talking about electric cars, to also be talking about electric bikes, if that might be an option. So I wanted to note that for you as well.
Thank you. Yes, that's definitely something we can look at.
Sammy, your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, Damon. I captured that. And I'd like to move the motion, including the electric bikes and the two other comments. And one more other comment, Laura, would be to look into opportunities to bulk purchase with local, county, state, and federal agencies. And I'll reiterate the previous two that I wanted to include in the resolution, which is, one is include in the facility capacity analysis what the potential for solar is at the facility for generating the necessary electricity to power the vehicles. The other one is include under projected greenhouse gases scenarios, a scenario where all vehicles are powered by town generated solar electricity. And then look into electric bikes for use by staff, and lastly, opportunities to bulk purchase with local, county, state, and federal agencies.
Sammy, thanks for listing those. Just so I make sure I understand from Laura, it sounds like, Laura, you have some more presentation to go through with us, is that right? So should we hold off on considering the resolution until we hear the rest of your presentation, or I'm not sure what we have in store for us from you. So maybe you can give me a highlight or an outline.
Sure. Yeah, the rest of the presentation just involves the dietary greenhouse gas emission. So it doesn't involve anything with the fleet study.
Okay, so the resolution is unrelated to that. Okay. So the adoption of the resolution has been moved by Sammy along with the 4 points that he just listed. Sammy, thanks for doing that. There were some other comments from council members that it sounds like require some follow-up as well. And
yeah, the one reason I didn't include Susan, yours is I felt like it was captured on item number 4. It says maintenance requirements in the list. But I'm open. If you would like to further clarify, please offer a friendly amendment.
I would just add a couple more to that list, Sammy, if it's okay with you. One is,
sure.
Barbara had a question about clarifying the role of considerations of environmental justice in the community climate action plan.
Damon, the only reason I didn't include any of those, including my own, is that the resolution seems like it's very specific to the RFP.
You're right. Okay, thank you for that. Just want to make sure that those other things don't get lost, including yours and Barbara's and Susan's.
Yeah, okay. Please don't let it get lost, Mayor. Appreciate it.
There is a motion from Sammy that includes the 4 items that he listed and adoption of the resolution in attachment A. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Barbara. Is everyone clear about what the motion is? See some nodding heads. Okay. I'll do a roll call vote. Barbara?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Danny?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
And Damon? Aye. Matter passes unanimously. Thanks, everyone.
Damon, could I offer one more comment? Sorry. I just wanted to highlight that one way in which environmental justice is captured in this is in what our goal is in terms of climate justice. We often think about our country as the global north without taking into account the global south, where a lot of the impacts will be felt. And the historical emissions of greenhouse gases is in large part coming from our country. And that's why our greenhouse gas goals are more aggressive than most goals you can find anywhere, is because we're accounting for those historical emissions. And I recognize while that may not be speaking to the adaptation side of climate impacts, it does on the mitigation, in as much as you reduce emissions, you're reducing the calamity that will happen, and those who will first be feeling it, you just sheerly by taking away the cause of it. So I'm not taking away from all of Barbara's comments. I just wanted to offer that as one way in which it is being addressed.
And I think Laura has also heard these two questions from Barbara specifically about how our climate action plan talks about environmental justice, and the second one being question about the Green Neighborhoods program and how neighborhoods are being included in that program. I see a hand from Barbara.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Slade. And I appreciate what you said. But, in thinking about it, I mean, it's just like, our plan is not really addressing it or even mentioning it. It's like it's non-existent. And, it very much is existing, which is why I gave those 4 very specific, 2 of them recently, and examples. And so I just feel like, it warrants a space, within our CCAP, or somehow intertwined. And I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm not staff. That's not my charge. But certainly I recognize the importance of it, and have just kind of been watching, as it's just kind of gone along. And I'm just like, this has got to be in here, because in my mind, the 2 are intertwined, and they're not, they're not separated. And so, this is the reason why I bring it up. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Slade.
I agree. I do think this is a great opportunity for Laura and her colleagues to just kind of share a reminder with us how our plan is addressing or trying to address some of these issues of environmental justice. I feel like we had even a couple of years ago a conversation about an amendment to the plan that directly engaged that issue. So it's just a good opportunity for us to get just kind of another primer about what's in our plan. Okay.
Sorry, Damon, just a reminder, we did have some students from the School of Social Work who did a study that helped in terms of outreach. So I would encourage staff to I think it was supposed to be included as an addendum to our climate action plan. So maybe it's already included, and if not, it's been requested, and let's make sure that's included in there. Thanks.
Okay, well, Laura, we've compressed your time down for the last part of your presentation, but we won't, that's not your problem. So you have another portion of your presentation to continue with, so please go ahead.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Mayor. The next part of the presentation involves the dietary greenhouse gas emissions inventory. And this inventory, we started this inventory as part of the Community Climate Action Plan's food choice recommendation. And within that recommendation, it involves asking the town to develop a way to capture diet-related greenhouse gas emissions and help measure progress towards our goal. And so greenhouse gas emissions related to diet, there's a large part of them that occur outside of town limits. And our regular community inventory that we do every few years, that only takes into account emissions that occur within Carrboro city limits. And so in order to look at dietary emissions, we asked Carrboro residents several questions in the Community Climate Action Plan survey. We were able to calculate some emissions related to the highest carbon emitting foods. And I need to mention that I had a partner in this endeavor with Chrissy Shalkoff from the Climate Action Team. She is a doctoral candidate from the University of North Carolina, and she did a lot of work to make this inventory a reality. So thank you so much, Chrissy. So in the next few slides, I'll be going over some of the assumptions we made in the survey, how we calculated the emissions, looking at the results, and how can we move forward and start reducing emissions related to food in Carrboro. And to start, just help frame the conversation by talking about a few of the assumptions we made in the survey. So to start, we focused only on several foods, namely meat and dairy. These are the food types that emit the highest amount of carbon emissions. So we did not include emissions from foods like vegetables or fruit or legumes in this inventory. That's something that we could consider at a future date. It would just involve a much more detailed survey. In addition, we did not ask Carrboro residents to specify the different types of dairy or meat products they ate, besides asking specifically about beef, because that's the highest emitter. So we had to use averages for all of dairy products and meat products as well. We also made assumptions about the portion size that Carrboro residents eat. We used USDA guidelines for that because we did not ask residents about the exact portion sizes they ate. We also made assumptions about the numbers of meals Carrboro residents eat in a day and a week. We assumed that all residents eat 3 meals a day and 21 meals a week. The demographics of the survey aligned closely with the town demographics, but they weren't exact. So that's something we definitely wanted to mention. And the survey was only administered to residents over age 18. So this inventory only accounts for, we had to basically make assumptions for all residents under age 18 about the products they're eating as well. So with that, I'll talk a little bit about the scope of this inventory. This picture here on the screen shows the entire process of growing and producing, transporting food, and getting it to the consumer and the waste produced from food. And so within the blue box, all of those are emissions that occur outside of town limits. That's what's included in this dietary inventory. So that includes, for example, fuel used to power farm machinery, water used in fields to produce crops that will feed people or animals. It includes growing animals. Beef is a very high emitter of methane because cows produce it as part of their digestive process. So that's something that's included within that blue box. And it also includes transport to different processing centers and distribution centers. It also includes waste from that process. So when I talk about the dietary inventory, I'm only talking about emissions within this blue box and outside Carrboro city limits. There are also emissions related to food that occur within this green box at the bottom of the screen. Those are emissions related to consumers driving to the store, using electricity to cook their food or refrigerate it, and also emissions from food waste in the landfill. And all of those are accounted for in our current town inventory that we perform every few years. And so that's just a distinction that I wanted to make clear. When I just talk about dietary emissions, I'm talking only about the emissions in the blue box. And moving forward on the next few slides, I tried to color code charts, whether they related to emissions in the outside town limits or within town limits. And so this is a graph of emissions related to different types of food per kilogram. So as you can see on the left side of the graph, this is food types that produce the least amount of emissions. That includes vegetables and fruits, some grains, cereals, legumes, and rice. And then on the right of the green line are all of the different types of food that produce higher emissions throughout the entire food production process. And those are all the foods that we include in our dietary inventory. And most of these are meat or dairy products. In the survey, we got some great results about what dietary types Carrboro residents follow. So we learned that 6.6% of Carrboro residents are vegetarian, which is higher than the national average of 5%. And around 3% of Carrboro residents are vegan, which is similar to the national average of vegans as well. There are also Carrboro residents who consume dairy-free diets or pescatarian diets where the only meat they consume are fish. And so we also got some great numbers for how many meals a week Carrboro residents consume dairy, meat in general, and how many meals of those meat meals are beef. And we used those numbers with numbers for average portion sizes and a meta-analysis looking at average emissions per kilogram of each of these different types of food. And we came up with an emissions inventory for dairy and meat products. And that is the box you see on the left. So the dietary inventory, these are all emissions that occur before all your food gets to Carrboro. And so as you can see, beef produced the highest amount of emissions, followed by non-beef meat and dairy, which were pretty similar. So total, we got around 17,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent that are produced outside of Carrboro city limits due to meat and dairy consumption in Carrboro. Just to show how this compares to other emissions, on the right in the green box, you have the emissions that occur within Carrboro city limits. And this is our most recent 2019 community emissions inventory. And you can see that the emissions from food outside Carrboro city limits compare similar to the amount of emissions produced by the town natural gas usage in 2019. And so just wanted to provide these two figures just to show how the numbers compare. And now we have two different inventories for the town. We have this green box, which is the one that we will keep repeating every few years. And then we have the blue box, which we can use to track progress on dietary related emissions. And so now that we have these numbers, how can we work to reduce our emissions? Well, there's a few different strategies that we can employ, and we can try to work to educate Carrboro residents. So the first strategy is to reduce consumption of the highest emitting foods, and that would include switching meals from beef to a different meat, or eating one less meal per week of meat. And we want to try to provide Carrboro residents with smaller steps, ways that they can work to change habits, because food it's a very personal, personal decision, and everyone has different reasons why they eat what they eat. We want to be very respectful of that and really just help focus on different ways that Carrboro residents can use to help the town reach its goals. And so, in addition to changing the types of food, there's also we evaluated whether or not eating organic would make a difference in emissions. And this chart shows that there are definitely several different types of food in the green that you could choose organic and you'd be reducing your emissions footprint. And so fruits and vegetables, fish, pork, and even beef are all options where you could choose and reduce your footprint by eating organic. In addition, there's also the emissions in the food that are related to the food footprint that occur within city limits, and ways to reduce carbon footprint related to food within city limits. We could have residents walking, using transit, or biking to the store to buy their food, walking to the farmer's market, purchasing more foods that were produced or grown locally, or composting food waste. And so we really want to make sure that residents know that all of these different aspects are part of your food footprint. It's not just about what you eat, but it's about how you get it and what you do with the waste and where it comes from. And so all of these are really important in reducing emissions in town. And so to summarize, greenhouse gas emissions are created throughout the entire food production and transportation process. We have a new dietary inventory, which looks at emissions before the products enter Carrboro. Then we also have a community inventory, which includes emissions that occur within Carrboro. And we have these baseline numbers, and we can use them to track progress. We have some really great information now that we can use to update our survey. We're hoping to administer the Climate Action Plan survey every few years. And now we can hopefully refine the questions to hopefully get some more information dietary inventory the next time we do it. And now we have a baseline number to look at when we're tracking progress on trying to do outreach and education about this topic. And there are many ways to reduce your food footprint, and using alternative transportation is a big one. Purchasing food that's organic or local, composting food waste, and also changing how often or how much you eat of the highest emission foods. And I think that's all I had for this presentation. So thank you so much, Doug.
Thanks so much, Laura. This is really fun to take a look at and pour over a little bit. And I appreciate the quick summary. So council members, we are running a little over on our agenda item for time on this item. So just keep that in mind. And I don't think that there's any action requested of us tonight on this particular part of the presentation. So happy to recognize folks for any burning questions you have, but just keeping in mind that we do have a closed session to get to a little bit later. Randy, you're up.
Yeah. Oh my God, Laura, Chrissy, thank you for making the shout out to Chrissy. I know how much she has input on this. This was splendid, absolutely splendid. It's really important to consider shrinking our food footprint. Laura, I would encourage two things. One, please include these in our food footprint module, or send the slides to me and I will include them. In fact, if you would just send them to me, I'll make sure in the copies I have of the food footprint climate action module that I'll make sure to get it in, and let's make sure that we have it on your copy as well. Second, I would encourage you to reach out to the Plant-Based for the Planet in Carrboro Facebook site and share the data and the slides with them as well. There's a really vibrant plant-based community in Carrboro that would love to be able to have and share this data. Again, thank you so very much. This is the kind of data that is not easily gotten. I know how hard you work to get it and get it right. And so much appreciation. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Sammy, you're next.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, it's a lot of work and a lot of trickiness and the assumptions and how to approximate what we likely use. Could you go back to the slide that showed the two pie charts, please? So on the one on the right, I just wanted to offer that maybe when we update it, we can include the pie segment that represents the dietary greenhouse gases. Does that make sense, Laura? So that they relate to each other, and once you have that, it would be really good to let people know in Carrboro what we've learned through social media, letting folks know. And by the way, Council, Laura's also been working with both the EAB and well, not yet with the climate team, but on ways in how to, use this information. In other words, in how to facilitate folks in changing the way, or at least thinking about the impacts and how we eat. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sammy. All right, Laura, thanks so much for all the hard work. I know that this represents a lot, many hours what you've presented here tonight. So I appreciate what you're doing, and we will look forward to the next update from you.
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, let me check, make sure I remember where we are here. We've done our resolution. Before we move on to getting into our closed session, y'all, I just did want to do one quick reminder about we have, as you know, Black History Month activities going on, including a couple of things, I believe, this week. The puppet performance by Jaghetto is his performer name. He's done a lot of work with paper hand puppet intervention over the years and has come out of sort of that school of teaching and performing. So I encourage y'all to check that out. Also have the panel and reenactment of the Frederick Douglass speech, I believe it is on Saturday, which will also feature a panel with James Williams, who we heard from last week, our own Barbara Fouché, Professor Sturkey, who many of us know over at UNC, and Greer Webb, who's an undergrad at UNC.
Thursday, Mayor. Sorry, Thursday. It's on Thursday.
Oh, it's on Thursday. You're right. It's on Thursday. Thursday at the Century Center in person, if you're able to attend in person. Also will be a virtual option for folks who want to attend remotely. Check out on the website, town website has a listing of all the other events that are going on this month, so check that out too. Sammy?
Sorry, Damon, I guess the Geppetto is also on the website. Do you know what day that is?
I actually didn't. The reason I didn't mention the date is because I wanted to confirm that with staff, because I'm wondering if there's a typo on the website maybe. So I was actually going to ask the manager if he would work with staff to make sure that the date on that event is correct on the website.
Great, I'll find it in the directory that Rexham Park has. Thanks.
Okay. We have on the agenda a closed session to discuss a personnel matter. So if folks are ready at it, be open to a motion to do that.
So moved.
Moved by Randy and seconded by Susan. We'll do a roll call vote. Barbara?
Aye.
I'm seeing there was a hand. Sorry. Okay, Barbara says aye. Randy?
Aye.
Danny?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
And I say aye. The matter passes unanimously, and we will hang out for a sec while we get moved into closed session. are back in open session.
We are back.
Great. All right. Well, to whoever is out there listening to our being in open session now, which is probably not many people, welcome to Wesley Barker, Carrboro's new town clerk as of the end of this month. And we're very glad to be able to approve the town's employment agreement with Wesley tonight. So council members, I need a motion to approve the employment agreement.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that, I didn't see, was that Susan or Barbara?
Barbara.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Danny, a second by Barbara to approve the employment agreement between the town and Wesley Barker. I'll do a roll call vote. Barbara?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Danny?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Sammy?
Hi.
And Damon? Aye. Matter passes unanimously. We're very excited. Thanks so much, Wesley, for being here tonight.
Welcome, Wesley.
Congratulations. Very excited to have you.
I'm excited to get to work with everybody. See you soon. Very soon.
Very soon.
Good luck making the move.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
All right, so moved by Randy, second by Sammy, that we adjourn. I'm going to say that we'll do that by acclamation if you just raise your hands. All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Yeah.